You can't control the world that your kids grow up in. But one thing you can change is the way they walk into the world, especially when it comes to a subject of money. So today we want to talk about how to have conversations with your kids, all revolving money, and hopefully shape their future financial lives. Hey everyone, Tommy Durfler, Sam Rice here on the Lighthouse Wealth Group Spotlight Podcast. Appreciate everybody joining us today. And one thing that we really want to dive into is this whole idea of how to be able to talk to your kids about money. And we want to do this the right way. I think, a lot of these conversations are very uncomfortable. There's a lot of emotions behind these. And frankly, parents aren't typically taught how to have these conversations, what to say and, what not to say maybe. And so, we want to break that down. And so one thing we're going to be talking about today is, what to teach at every stage of childhood, how to simplify money without necessarily dumbing it down, what not to say, and then really, just the values that really matter the most. And so let's go ahead and dive in. But so Sam, why is it that, people oftentimes find this very difficult to approach and talk to their kids about?
Yeah, I think there's a couple reasons. For parents, it could be a really high stress subject. It's a lot of people think about talking about money in general as a bit taboo. But I think it's, as we spoke about a little bit before, it's, if you don't educate them when they're young, when it matters, it can be you could be learning a hard lesson the hard way instead of being able to be taught the kind of better way on the front end. And you don't want to overshare as a parent, right? Of course they want to know about income and they hear keywords of net worth and stuff like that. And I think the basics, as we teach people on, that's irrelevant on the front end. It's really setting up the basics to build into those bigger categories down the road. And then I think a lot of people just, whatever profession they may be involved with currently as their job, they don't think they're qualified probably to talk about money or saving or investing. But I think honestly, as you're the closest people that your kids have to you, if they're going to listen to somebody else or they're going to listen to you. So if you're not starting this out at an early age and making it a normal part of conversation, right, they're going to listen to potentially other people online or their friends that may not be as well versed or as grounded as the parent, with I would say a more potentially tried and true or safer investment strategy than some clickbait thing they may see online kind of thing. And I think, I mean, you start from the ground up, and at a young age, start with allowance. You start with just the basics, and you build on that. So I think, starting from a young age is good. What does that look like for you, Tommy? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's like these conversations are going to evolve over time, right? And so I think what you said is building the basics and the foundation is great just at first, and it's really, we broke it down to say, okay, ages 5 to 10, right? Because before that, it's kind of irrelevant. It's it can be a more difficult concept. And so, if you look and saying, okay, well, what do you teach as far as the basics go? I think some of the things you can always teach is, hey, money comes from work, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have to do something to be able to earn that money. Another thing is you can't just buy everything. This whole concept of, a marketplace and, hey, here's what we do. for work, for our careers, as far as being able to earn a living, and then at the end of the day, hey, we don't have the option for everything, or most people don't. And you can teach certain things like savings, the idea of savings. Savings create options. And everything has a price tag on it. And then I think another big thing is, the idea of giving as well. And I think that's always really important to start as early age as possible, and this whole idea of giving and what that means. And we're doing this to be able to help others,
Kids love to give.
They do. They really do. And that's why you want it at this young age, because, you're starting them just so, like they're a sponge at this point. And so, a couple things I've seen people do are 3 different jars, right? If somebody has, let's say, an allowance or something, you can basically say, or not even using them as an example, but using the parents, and say, hey, there's 3 jars. There's our spending jar, there is our savings jar, and then there's our giving jar. And again, at this phase, you're just explaining these concepts. And so you can say, hey, be able to explain these concepts of spending, saving, then giving, and, hey, we can buy this thing today, or we can wait, continue to save, and if we're patient and we continue to save, we can buy maybe even something a little bit better later. And so, you want to be able to teach these values of choices, patience, and goal setting. Right, and that's really what you're trying to get across at this age, from 5 to 10, of just saying, hey, these are the things you have to think about, and you have choices, we need patience, and being able to goal set. Now from there, if you look at, okay, from ages 10 to 15, now you become a little bit more hands-on, and so the valuable lessons are teaching like wants versus needs. When the child says, hey, we want this, it's a matter of, okay, do we want this or do we need it? We need a roof over our head, we need certain clothes, we need jackets at wintertime. These are the things we need. Now, is this something that we truly need or truly want? And then just being able to budget really small things, right? And so planning ahead, evaluating even quality versus price. And I think this is a good one too. And just start getting that idea inside their head of, okay, this is great for today, but maybe we want something a little bit better, that if we have this patience and we save a little bit more, we can buy something that's an upgrade. And I think at these ages too, you want to start incorporating the idea of marketing. And, marketing is something now kids have 24/7 access to. I mean, it's on every social media. Our phones are...
It's hitting you.
I mean, our phones are accessible no matter where you are, what you're doing. And so this whole idea of, hey, you're being marketed to all the time. And this is how marketing can manipulate our desire, and hey, if we didn't see this advertisement, is this something that we would have even thought about, wanting? Well, probably not. Well, guess what? That's what marketing is designed to do. And so then you can start teaching them, hopefully, things like a budget, and here's what a budget does, and how, okay, because I remember in high school, my parents, one thing they did is they said, hey, we're going to buy you what you need, but anything that you want is on you. So, I remember, again, you're in high school, right? And so in high school, you're just so influenced by your friends and what they're wearing. And so I wanted this jacket, and, I really wanted this jacket. So I did my best to sell to my parents, I need this, I need this,
right.
Which kids will always do, right? They're the greatest salespeople on earth. But, and they basically said, listen, if we bought you a new jacket, because you do need one, here's the price what we're willing to pay. But if you want something better than this, then you're going to have to pay for the difference in this. And so it was a great way for me to say, oh, okay, those are the rules of the game. Great. Now I want this. So mom and dad are only going to put up this amount of money. I'm going to go get a job, work, save that up, and so I get the jacket I want, right?
Yeah.
And so...
Man, that feels so good.
Yeah.
When you do that.
It does, and now that's when these light bulbs, you start to see those click.
That's right.
In kids. And so, being able to give them a little bit of options and making it realistic in their world, not ours. Right?
It's that freedom and autonomy.
Exactly. So, and keep in mind, kids will make mistakes. They will. And that's really, you want to allow them to make these mistakes on a very small level so they get that learning experience right away rather than learning on the big ticket items, right? That's where you don't want them learning,
That's right.
You don't want them to learn the lesson of overspending and not having much money on a mortgage. That's what you don't want, but if it's a piece of clothing, you're like, okay, this is, let's start small here.
Yeah.
From that point, if you look at ages 15 through 20, this is, for me, this is the exciting part, because we have families come in with kids that are teenagers in the late teenage years, getting ready to go to school. And now you're talking about opening up a bank account. You're talking about how debit cards work, how credit cards work, how the dangers of being in debt, before they go off to college and they're being solicited to, because every credit card company knows, the prey is really college students.
Prime time.
Let's offer a bunch of free stuff so they open up a credit card and we just hope that they make mistakes, right? And then we're getting all this interest. So again, and one of the things I love to see are when kids get their first job and they get their first paycheck. And all of a sudden you get to have this really cool lesson about taxes. And they're like, well, wait a minute. I can do some quick math here and say, okay, if I get this much per hour and I work these many hours, I should be getting this amount of money. It's like, well, let's talk about this for a second.
You did, and they took part of it.
That's right. And so, this is also the age where you could talk about credit scores and the basics of investing, what a stock is, what a bond, what a mutual fund is. And so, then they can really incorporate that into the real world, and you can take them to say, hey, let's go open up a bank account. You save some money. Great. Let's put this in the bank. Let's go together, have them be a part of that process, and so that's, really where I think that foundation really starts to go to the next level. And, a lot of kids at this age from 15 to 20 sometimes will start, asking mom and dad, well, how much do you make? How much do you make? Because kids are all talking to each other, and, they start to get the idea of, the size of the house, if they have a large house or a small house or whatever it may be, but things are starting to click a little bit. And so, I think one of the things that we found really helpful is when parents are saying, hey, it's not the exact income that matters, it's what we do with that income once we receive it. And so what we do with it is we manage it. We've got to learn to manage this responsibly. Hey, we've got, a jar here to put some money in for saving. We've got a jar here to put it in for spending. And then we want to have another jar here full of giving, and so, those are just kind of some real world examples of things that you can kind of teach along the way at different ages. And, obviously this is all dependent on the maturity level. Some kids learn a little bit faster. Some kids will learn a little bit slower and take more time. So obviously we tell the parents, hey, use discretion, as far as that goes. But essentially that really does tee up the foundation for that financial education that they need later in life. So, but what about, let's tie in some values here. Talk to us a little bit about that as far as values and how you can incorporate money with values.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you were saying before, teaching the purpose behind the money and not just it's a dollar value, I think is probably more important than a lot of the other reasons, because it gives you the purpose for it, right? For all these things. So having and understanding maybe a family core value for what they work for, what they save for, what they spend on, those kind of things really gives that North Star and direction of what we're doing this for. And you can create your own values too, like as a child and as a teenager, right? Whatever may be passionate for you, maybe you're really involved with taking care of animals at the local shelter or something like that. So having values like that, or your church or your community in some regard, and then just being intentional, not only with what you make, what you save, but also what you spend. It gives you the better probably push for your work ethic, and helps you build that strong foundation for building a good future for yourself as a child, and then being able to teach that to your kids as a parent. The why behind everything that we do, right? Because your kids see that you may go to work every day, they may somewhat understand what you do, but the why is oftentimes more impactful, whether it's taking care of your family or being able to take care of your clients, and both of those things, and then potentially also being able to give back to your church, your community, what have you, whatever might be passionate for you. I think are those better teaching experiences than just, hey, I make X amount of dollars and I put X in this bucket, X in this, X in this. But understanding why we give to these causes, and every cause has a purpose, whether it's yourself or others, right? You've got a family. Don't short sell them.
Well, I like what you said about the North Star with the value system, right? Because at the end of the day, if you have any money left over at the end of the month, then it is a choice, right? And so it's a matter of not just saying, okay, we can do whatever we want, but hey, where do we spend money that really truly reflects our values? And I don't think a lot of people do that. I think it's easy not to do, but I think my experience is the families and individuals that really do focus on that. It's like planting a seed, and then 5, 10,
it's really cool.
15 years later, you're like, wow, our kids have done a phenomenal job being financially responsible. And it all started with that kind of North Star in the form of some core values.
Yep. It's so my mom was involved with St. Jude's, and so we give back to them about every month. And then on the same time, our kids, about once a year, they collect all their toys that they haven't really played with for the most part of the year. And of course, we're sad to see them go because we spent money on it. But they get to donate it to other kids, and they it's surprising, even as 3 and 5 year olds, how excited they get to be about giving back. And I think those little snidbits, at a young age, it translates into years ahead.
Well, one last note on that too is, for our daughter, what we do is we recognize that, when you have a child at first, everybody just wants to give gifts on their birthdays and, Christmas, and everybody overdoes it. I mean, we've all experienced that. And so one rule that we had in the Durflo household was the fact that we said, hey, listen, every time we get a new gift, we're going to give another gift away. So we don't want to have this idea of, hey, let's just accumulate stuff, right? Let's part of that giving at a very young age, because our daughter was young, and so there wasn't an allowance or anything like that. But we started teaching that and saying, every time we get something, let's be able to give somebody else this gift as well. And so we start donating it to the Goodwill and having her be a part of that process. And the first 2 or 3 times, she's just like, okay, whatever. But if you consistently...
Or it's a little hard.
It is.
Don't give my toys away. But then they start to get it.
or the fact that they just don't know what they're doing, right? They're just like, okay, I can't have this
Yeah.
anymore. Okay, great. But then you continue with that and it starts to click and it's like, oh, yeah, of course I love receiving things and I want to give that to somebody else.
Yes.
And so when they start figuring that on their own, you're like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. So
pretty cool. Yeah. And then, obviously there's a couple key phrases and words that we can help with parents, when training kids and trying to talk about wealth or money to the next generation, and just focusing on, allowance is a great start. Understanding, if we do work, we earn money, and then we get to use that in whichever way we want. Typically in those couple of different buckets, we save it, we spend it, and we save it and give it, pardon me, and we use that as a reinforcement on an early life, to really help with that foundation. Saving for big purchases, right? That, a lot of things in life we have to save up for. It's that delayed gratification, teaching that at an early age. Mm-hmm. That, every time we get a paycheck or an allowance, we don't just blow it on something cool and sweet. And that, usually the bigger things in life are worth saving for, especially the big things, right? And if they, along with that, right, having a goal for that saving for that big purchase down the road. And I know this reminds me of buying an expensive mountain bike back when I was maybe 12 or 13. It was maybe about $1,000, but I had to, obviously I didn't have the money for it. And I tried to convince my parents to buy it for me. They said no. So that was shut down pretty quick. But I had to mow lawns for, like an entire summer to get that mountain bike. But dang, that was, I still remember it now because it's something you worked for. And I feel like when you're having those conversations with your kids and you're encouraging them to do that hard work and to save those dollars here and there, even if you have to help them a little bit on the way, that's okay. Mm-hmm. If they're doing the effort, hey, no harm, no foul. But man, they really remember that, for the rest of their life. And so I think that's a great learning lesson for, just not giving everything handed to you. Even if you have means as a family, having your kids work for at least a majority or a portion of it, that it's not just given to them, I think is huge. Because I'm sure, you knew kids like this, Tommy, growing up, but, everything was just handed to them. And then they didn't have a really good work ethic in later in life. And I think the kids that really did and really, excelled in school and or work, they really had that that delayed gratification kind of principle. Yeah. That I think is key with not only saving but also investing. So I think that's the kind of the root of all of this. But you want to go over a couple maybe hard conversations that parents might encounter with their kiddos?
Yeah, I think a lot of times as parents, one of the go-to phrase is anytime you have a kid that wants something they can't have, or whatever is, I've heard a lot of parents say, oh, can't afford that, can't afford that, can't afford that. And the reality is, it's, if you can only say that phrase so many times before kids start to kind of figure out, like, wait a minute, this isn't lining up because we're doing X, Y, and Z, but we're not doing A, B, and C. Like, this isn't, almost creates this mistrust around, your financial
That's a good
situation.
Point.
And so, and again, there's sometimes you can't afford it, but having that be the go-to, I think if you can only say that so many times. And a lot of times I get it, you can, and that's good, but, you you can't get in that loop of just using that as the go-to phrase every time they see something they want that you're not going to get them. So, again, you can reposition this to say, hey, we can't afford this, but we're choosing, to spend money here.
There you go.
We're choosing to do this instead, and I think that that there's a certain amount of honesty and trust that goes into that, where kids don't want to be lectured to all the time. They don't want to hear the same phrase all the time. So it's a matter of having that honesty with them and saying, okay, we can't afford this, but we're choosing not to do this. We're choosing to do this instead, and here's why, and so
Yep.
I think just, explaining to them a little bit more as far as that goes, or, well,
that's a delayed gratification right there, right?
Yeah. And then, looking at credit cards, if somebody says, hey, we can use a credit, Childs will, again, kids, I've done all these phrases to some degree,
We can just
right?
buy it. Yeah.
We can just buy it on a credit card. Let's just use a credit card and we can have it. And it's like, well, yeah, we can do that, but, we will have to
Still going to
pay for it plus interest. So it's costing us even more money if we want it right now, or we can be patient and wait, save up for it, and then buy this later. You almost bring them into saying like, hey, and again, use discretion, maturity here. But you've got to be able to explain to them, hey, if we buy this down on a credit card, it's costing us more money. It's more expensive.
That's right.
And so if we don't have the money now, it's going to get even worse later.
Mm-hmm.
And a big one, especially in the teenage years, is just the lifestyle comparison. Because teenagers especially, they only know what they see. And that can be really dangerous. And so, anytime you hear this, like, oh, well, this family gets to do whatever they want, or this family, they always get this, or this, my friend always is doing this, and it's like, listen, if we compare ourselves to everyone else, it's going to lead us down to making bad decisions. So we're not here to compare ourselves to other families or your friends. We focus on our values as a family, not how this appears to everybody else. These are our values. This is as a family, or what we've decided, we need to do, and whether decision you're at that point. But hey, as a family, this is where our heart is. Yes, we're not going to go buy a BMW for you at 16 years old. I'm sorry, or a Mercedes. We're just not going to do that. That's not our value system. Our value system is not based on other people's perceptions of who we are. And so a lot of time that's a harder conversation, and again, teenagers are going to be teenagers. But I think that having that and kind of bringing back to yes, we are not here to purchase things based on how it makes us look to other people, or hey, we're not comparing ourselves to other families. That's the decision that family's made for best for them. Great, they can do that. Just like it's our decision to base some of these financial decisions based on what's best with our family. And so, and then it's the age-old, question, are we rich or are we poor? And I think that's always a very, very pivotal moment to be able to answer this. And so, I think one of the things that probably, what I would say not as wise is saying yes or no. Either way, even if it's true or untrue, like just a yes or no, because then they get to fill in the gaps of what that really means. And so,
very good point.
What you do is you explain, hey, it's not about how much money we have, it's about how we manage it. And this is how we manage what we've earned. And we've worked very, very hard for what we have. And that applies to any financial status, whether you have an abundance or if there, isn't there a lot at the end of the month. It's, hey, no matter what position we're in, we've worked hard for what we have, and just having a sense of gratitude for what you do have. And I think kids are really in tuned to your heart most of the time. Again, these are generalities, so I know there's exceptions, but I really do think that kids, at a young age are really sponges. And so, and with that being said, obviously one of the reasons why we decided to do this podcast are because of the emotions, and we as parents have not been taught how to have these conversations. And so there's so many mistakes that we make, in these times, because we just haven't been taught really, hey, how do you handle this? I mean, some of us have, and there's good wisdom out there that helps us, but
the lucky ones have. Yeah.
But I mean, what are some of the mistakes we see that parents have when having these conversations?
I mean, as you said before, probably some of the ones that we're probably making right now, or our parents did, and just avoiding talking about money in general. Everyone thinks, probably in a older generation, that it's very taboo to talk about money.
So true.
But I think the only way to combat understanding it, grasping it, utilizing it, and taking advantage of what you have at your disposal at an early age, and really the beauty of many cases of what we talk about and money is time, compounding interest, the eighth wonder of the world. And the earlier you grasp that, understand it, and can utilize it, the better off you'll be, like, wholeheartedly, So I think a lot of people just avoid talking about that in general.
Yeah.
Which, yeah.
I think so too. I mean, just I don't know how to do this, therefore we won't talk about it at all, is not always the right answer either.
I mean, talk about what you know. Or,
yeah.
I mean, if you don't currently have a financial advisor, have your kid talk to a banker. Talk to anyone who deals with money on a common daily kind of routine. They can help understanding it, checking accounts, savings accounts, basics.
Yeah, and I think the other mistake a lot of parents make is just the oversharing of anxiety. A lot of parents might have anxiety over money, whether it's a little or a lot. You can have this anxiety that you're afraid is going to basically be passed down to kids, and so it's the oversharing anxiety of, and again, you don't need to share everything.
Well, it's like the same hesitations. Yeah, I mean, it's the same hesitations you have probably, or many people have, with sharing, because they feel like they don't know. It's oversharing with, people say they've had bad past experiences where, hey, you can shield them from that. What did you take from it? What could you share to your kids that was actually that learning tidbit without the crazy reality of what may have happened, and what causes you some big anxiety now? But how did we form that into a learning experience? And again, that leads into saving kids from the same consequences we probably ran into, early in life, right? We're there to teach them and educate them. And unfortunately, a lot of the current kind of teaching system doesn't really talk about a lot of these factors, saving, personal finance. So unless they experience it themselves, we may be, in many cases, the last line of defense for our kids. So, and then, teaching the kids where they're at. You may have multiple kids. They're probably all at different levels of maturity, and kind of teaching to that level. We want them to be responsible for money and strategies and savings and earning, but also at the same time make it relatable. And I think those are really relatable ways in which you could address your kids. Talk to them about maybe some experience that you've had in the past with living with money in reality, and some of the ways in which you learned, and help them take those learning experiences and not have to duplicate them.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I would say on that one too is, however you approach money is going to be passed down one way or the other. And so again, if people are saying, hey, I don't want them to know too much, well, guess what? You don't have to tell them numbers. You don't have to say exact numbers. You know, you can say, hey, we're budgeting. Hey, this is what a budget is. You don't have to go through the numbers of a budget. Or, hey, we are saving, you know, or we're investing. Here's where we're putting our money. We're putting money in investments. You don't have to give them the number. Here's why. Hey, investments grow. We want to have a day that we want to have the option not to work anymore. We can spend more time with you. And, you know, these things is, again, you can always teach them these ideas without getting into any kind of numbers. And I think, you know, sometimes parents just don't know how to do that because they're like, oh, wait, I have to teach budgeting, but now I have to go through the numbers. It's like, no, you can teach budgeting without going through numbers. So, yeah, and anything else on that?
No, I think that's a huge point there too. I mean, you know, it could be overwhelming as a parent to talk about all these factors and talk about investing and saving and stuff like that. It's more the core understanding that you're trying to convey, and less so like how much we're doing, how much can you do. It's, can we do anything at all, and why are we doing this? What's the purpose behind it? Why are we working? Why are we saving?
Yes.
Yeah.
So just as we wrap up, just want to thank everybody for joining us today. Hopefully that helps. If you wanted to subscribe, like, or maybe share this with another parent that is really wanting to raise money smart kids, please share this. We appreciate it. Tommy Durfler, Sam Rice on the Lighthouse Wealth Group Podcast, The Spotlight. We'll see you next time.
See you then.